UConn is on their revenge tour.
You are Locked On Women's Basketball, your daily podcast on women's basketball. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Locked On Women's Basketball, your number one sports podcast network, free on YouTube and wherever you get your podcasts. I'm here with Golden State Valkyries radio analyst Sophia Jones. I'm Kalia Butler, the sideline reporter for the Chicago Sky, and today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDON for $20 off your first purchase. All right, our roadmap for today, there's been a lot of upsets over these past couple of weeks, and that remained true this past weekend. We'll get into that. Some more ranked games. There was a lot of ranked on ranked teams going up against each other. But we first have to start with UConn, who is just remaining dominant, whether they're competing in the Big East or they're not. This is their last kind of non-conference battle before we get into March Madness. And their last real test that they're probably going to face, unless somebody in the Big East happens to upset them, which isn't looking like the case. But UConn defeats Tennessee 96-66, which is their largest margin in the rivals' history. And this was a tight first half, though. They were tied neck and neck at halftime. Then one second half came in, and Geno Auriemma kind of essentially cursed everybody out at halftime based on how they were playing. They were able to create some separation.
Yeah, and because first off, there were so many games going on at the same time yesterday, but for that UConn game specifically, I felt like I was monitoring some other ones, and all of a sudden, especially in that third quarter, I look up and UConn is ahead by 20. And I think in the first half, they were just playing very sped up. Tennessee was forcing turnovers. Whereas in the second half, UConn was a little less calculated because in a defense that's constantly scrambling, you have to just use your instincts and improvise and take what the defense is giving you. And the Huskies did a much better job in the second half overall of just using that to their advantage and catching Tennessee off guard with just dribble penetration and not being as calculated, I think.
Yeah, in that first half, Geno Auriemma had said that they were playing way too fast and so out of control. And that was the first time he had seen them play like that within this year. But then once they got to the second half, I know he had some sort of halftime speech that he was talking about because he was saying that some of the players must have forgot once they came out into the third quarter because he felt like they still weren't necessarily performing the way that he wanted them to, because it remained close for the first, let's say, like 2 minutes in the third quarter. Still tied at 46, 2 minutes in, and then they had a 10-0 run that kind of pulled away with the lead. But you kind of have to credit Tennessee for their defense in the first half as well. Was UConn playing a little bit more rushed and out of tempo? Yes, but that is part of Tennessee's identity, is they do know how to rush teams. They were closing off a lot of gaps for UConn that they maybe would have found beforehand, but UConn kind of locked in after that first half and pulled away, especially when you're looking to Sarah Strong and Azzi Fudd. They combined for 53 points and 16 rebounds. Fudd led the team with 7 assists and Strong added 4.
Yeah, for Sarah Strong specifically, I think that it was a really good test for her, this matchup, because we've seen the way that she can initiate the offense before, but she's never gone up against front court pressure like Tennessee applies, where she's having 1 through 5 picking her up full court. And she was getting a little sped up in that first half, but like Geno said, I think really settled into it the second. I mean, finished with 26 points. She was 10 of 18, so still really efficient on the precipice of a double-double. But I just think that this was a really good performance for her and a great exposure as well to be faced against that pressure.
Yeah, when you're looking at your last chance to kind of play really strong competition before you head into tournament time and everything, this is the time to do so. And it was a good challenge. And I think what I'm saying earlier in terms of their revenge tour, it's something that head coach Geno Auriemma kind of mentioned too, which I love that he actually just says how it is, because, a lot of coaches will be like, we're not thinking about the past, yada, yada, yada. He was like, no, there is definitely a thought about we need to beat all these teams that we lost to last year. So he said that they talked about USC, they talked about Notre Dame, and they talked about Tennessee. That was a big part of their thinking. And they went 3 for 3 on defeating the teams that had beat them last year. So this is the completion of their revenge tour until they get to the NCAA tournament.
Yeah. And like you said, I love that that's on their mind, because it's completely normal to be fueled by just past or history, even for little petty reasons. I mean, I don't think anyone can say that they've not been petty in the past, but just for UConn to use that as extra motivation, because at this point in the season, they have to create their own motivation, because they need to know that they have the target on their back right now. They're looking like the favorites to win the national championship, and everyone's going to be gunning for them. So if they have to create their own quote unquote underdog mentality so that they can keep winning and performing the way that they are, I think that's completely valid.
Absolutely. Another big one this past weekend was UCLA and Iowa. To us, this was going to kind of determine who really runs the Big Ten right now. And UCLA has just remained dominant. Again, having these very comfortable wins against opponents, especially another top 10 opponent. They won 88-65. They remain now the only undefeated team in the Big Ten. Iowa drops to 9-2 in conference, and then Michigan is 10-1 right under them. But you have the players that maybe you anticipate to lead in this game when you're thinking of a Lauren Betts, who had 16 points, was really dominating on the inside, where they absolutely took advantage of over Iowa. But you had your guard play that really came in, and that was kind of the differentiator. Going back to the inside play, the Bruins had 56 points in the paint compared to Iowa's 26. That was the number that I was looking for in my notes. But guard plays played such a significant factor in this game too.
It did, and it's the guards that get the ball to the post and determine the pace and tempo that UCLA plays with. The Bruins, they just always wear down opponents. That's been a common theme, just with their physicality and pace on both ends of the floor. But for some of the guard play, Kiki Rice, she finished with 17 points, added in 7 assists. So she was really efficient in orchestrating the offense there. Charlize Ledger-Walker has also been doing a really great job facilitating. She finished with 10 points, 5 rebounds, and 5 assists. Gabrielle Haka is always going to be there to just do all the hustle plays as well. But a really big part was Angela Dugalic coming off the bench for UCLA. She was their leading scorer. She finished with 22 points. And I think that tandem, when she comes in the game, because she is more of a stretch four, she likes to shoot and be on the perimeter a bit more, still can dominate inside, but she does have a great 3-point shot. She was 3 for 4 that game. And it really helps to balance out that tandem between her and Lauren Betts, specifically when you're looking of them playing against an Iowa team who likes to emphasize their front court players as well. And you kind of negate the Hannah Stolke and Ava Hayden duo that can sit in the paint and play on Betts a lot more.
Yeah, and it's kind of interesting because that was obviously another part of it, is to see these front courts kind of go head to head too. And I think that's when you really see just how dominant UCLA truly is, and just this Betts play now that you have 2 Betts that are on the same team. But Hannah Stolke was the one leading the way for Iowa. She had 13 points, 8 rebounds. I think she had one of the top efforts for Iowa, obviously having to battle down low with some very tough UCLA bigs, but also defensively having a pretty strong presence herself. But as you mentioned, UCLA has done really good at wearing teams down, especially wearing them down late. And I think that was just a little bit too much for Iowa to respond to, kind of have that final push in this game.
Yeah, and Iowa, they are down on numbers as well. One of their starters, Taylor McCabe, had a season-ending injury a couple games ago. So since that has happened, though, they beat Ohio State. That's the game that happened. But then they lose to USC and UCLA. So Hawkeyes are going to need to do a little bit of revamping and just refining their roster or their rotations because, like we said, before this LA trip, Iowa was looking like that other team aside UCLA that was really dominant in the Big Ten, but now UCLA has just really stretched that distance.
UCLA will go on to play Rutgers on Wednesday, while Iowa will play Minnesota on Thursday. So UCLA looking to stay in the win column, Iowa looking to get back into it. But coming up after this, there was even more ranked games that happened this weekend. So stay with us as we recap those. The big game is almost here, and there's no better way to cash in during America's biggest sporting event than Prize Picks, where it always feels good to be right. And this week, Prize Picks has a special max discount for the big game. Live in the app right now. Drake May, go Patriots, needs just one passing yard for the max discount to win. Add another player to your lineup, and if your pick hits, you can cash in. I think you should be relying on Stephon Diggs, Drake May, just so many players that we can look at if you are rooting for the Patriots. If you're not rooting for the Patriots, that's a little bit unfortunate, but I'm still going to be okay with you. The whole format is clean. Pick more or less on 2 to 6 player projections. Download the Prize Picks app today and use code LOCKEDONNBA to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code LOCKEDONNBA to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. Prize Picks. It's good to be right. Let's get into some SEC play now. Number 24, Alabama went up against number 6, LSU. LSU won this way more comfortably than I think anybody may anticipate it. And we know at the beginning of the season when they had gone on their stretch of all these 100-point games, they're back in and they're doing it against another ranked opponent within the conference. They won this 103-63. They absolutely dominated start to finish, a 40-point victory, and they're playing at home on top of it. They were shooting over 56%, pressured Alabama into 17 turnovers, and they just set the tempo the entire game. Alabama just really had no response to it.
They didn't. It was a wire-to-wire win for LSU, and like you said, I think this game could have been a little bit, or people might have anticipated this to be a bit closer than what it actually ended up being, because Alabama is currently ranked number 24 in the AP poll, but LSU just completely dominated. And after those 2 initial losses in the SEC, they have really had a great turnaround, and they're looking really dominant. That non-conference form that we're used to seeing them as. But another great test in that rematch against Texas in Austin is on the slate for them next. So we'll see how much they can continue this momentum and the offensive prowess that we're used to seeing them have.
Absolutely. Another big one was number 10, Oklahoma, going up against number 4, Texas. Texas took this one away 78-70, obviously kept it close, but Texas's defense was just a little bit too much for Oklahoma to try to overcome. One of the most turnovers that they've really had all season, 21 turnovers for Oklahoma. And it just really slowed them down offensively. We know Oklahoma likes to get out there, be quick, but I think Texas forced them into some positions that they're not as comfortable with, and that worked out in their advantage.
Yeah, for Oklahoma, the shot selection, some of it was still very early in the shot clock, but Texas was right there contesting it all. So it just left to some really long rebounds that Texas capitalized off of. But Texas offense was really proficient in controlling and setting the tempo that game. Oklahoma, like we said, they like to just get stops, or even if it's a made basket, throw it over the top and try to get something early. But Texas, they were applying full court pressure, trying to take some time off the shot clock before Oklahoma can get into any kind of offensive rhythm and flow. And I think that's what really disrupted them. I think for Oklahoma, you look at Aaliyah Travis trying to be a lot of that offensive boost. And I thought that Rory Harmon did a fantastic defensive job against her. Again, trying to speed her up and contest shots as much as possible, because Chavez is going to get it off regardless. She doesn't see you in front of her. She just sees the basket. But if you're there being physical, disrupting it as much as possible, that's why Chavez was 3 of 13 on the day, only 11 points. But for Texas, they're looking really strong. And I want to highlight Aaliyah Crump, because she was a huge piece for their success early in the season, but she missed a really large chunk of about 2 months actually of play, going back to the middle of November, then returning back in mid-January against Texas A&M. This is only her 3rd game back, but she's been in double digits ever since. She's someone that on the season averaging 13 points, but she can really provide some offensive boost for Texas and stretch the floor for them specifically, because Texas isn't really a big 3-point shooting team, and Crump definitely helps to balance that.
Yeah, a balanced attack. And I think going back to what you were saying about that matchup between Aaliyah Chavez and Rory Harmon, I think some of the seniority really shines through for Texas as well in some of these games. Rory Harmon obviously has been with this program for quite some time. Chavez coming in as a freshman who has absolutely led this Oklahoma team, but that experience in these positions definitely has shined through for Texas in some of their games, even games that they have dropped. I think you can tell who they are relying on late in some of these games, and that also reigned true today. But Texas was shooting 50% overall, and they just made Oklahoma pay for those mistakes, scoring 25 points off of turnovers. So Oklahoma just kind of overwhelmed by that pressure, as you mentioned. Shot selection maybe wasn't as great as they have typically had, but they will look to bounce back. Another big one, going back to the Big Ten, number 9 Michigan went up against number 13 Michigan State. Thank you to all of you who commented about the rivalry and that it is a rivalry. Shout out to Shibby Miller, who has been on our podcast before. She played at Michigan and she was talking about the rivalry, so we got it now. Thank you guys. But Michigan won this one at 94-91 in overtime, and it all kind of came back to that sophomore trio that we were talking about going into this game that was able to help them pull it away.
Yeah, sophomore trio, Milo Holloway, who had a career-high 26 points. Olivia Olson added 23 points, and then, of course, Silas Swords also contributing to that sophomore trio group. But that game, that was the one that was going on at the same time as the UConn game. And especially in the 4th quarter when UConn stretched their lead, I was on this one a little bit more. But 4th quarter, they were just going bucket for bucket at a certain point. And it was really fantastic to watch. Got into overtime. Michigan State actually had a chance to win it at the end of regulation. They got a turnover on the sideline out of bounds against Michigan, and then put up a half-court heave. It hit the backboard, hit the rim about 3 times, and then just rattled out. So they were really close to winning the game in regulation, but Michigan was just a more dominant team in overtime. They're more resilient, able to string together more stops and continue the scoring that they've been doing. But in the overall game, I thought that Michigan's defense really gave Michigan State some problems. They were forcing turnovers, really just trying to take them out of their offensive flow early.
And I think Michigan is this other team that maybe flies under our radar to an extent in terms of them being highlighted. They're obviously ranked 9th right now. They're 2nd in the Big Ten, but they have only dropped 1 contest within conference play. I think maybe because they are still kind of a younger group, and maybe some of these other teams in the Big Ten that we have referred to, especially like a UCLA, Iowa, has a little bit more veteran leadership. But Michigan has come in and created problems for a lot of teams, and they're right under UCLA, who was undefeated.
Yeah, and like we said, it was looking like UCLA, Iowa for a little bit within the Big Ten, but I think you have to start including Michigan State in more so that number 2 spot rankings, because they're looking really good. They have a great chance to pick up some more wins in the rest of their schedule, but they are, and right now they actually are sitting at the number 2 spot with only 1 loss. Iowa under them and Ohio State have 2 losses. So I could see them staying and owning that number 2 spot.
Absolutely. We will see what's to come for Michigan. But after this, there were some Big 12 upsets. Let's get into it.
There's nothing like being in an NBA arena. The crowd, the energy, the moment. Getting tickets, though, that part hasn't always been as seamless. So that's why Game Time has become the go-to app for scoring tickets fast without the hassle. Puts the advantage back where it belongs, with the fans. You can just pull up the Game Time app, pick an upcoming NBA game, and have tickets locked within minutes. And one of the best features about the app is seeing the in-seat feature view, where you can just pick the seat that you want and you can see exactly how the court looks from that angle. If you're especially a major type A person like me, you like knowing all the details about where your money is going to. So take the guesswork out of buying NBA tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDON for $20 off your first purchase. That's code LOCKEDON for $20 off. Download the Game Time app today. And remember, it's gametime.co, not .com. This episode is brought to you by Betterhelp. February can be a lot sometimes. January is like the little trial month of the beginning of the new year, but February is when it really starts getting real. But here's the truth. There can be a lot of Valentine's Day stuff, more New Year's, and no matter where you are, therapy can help you find your way. It can help you get a clear view on what you want, what feels heavy, and how to take some pressure off yourself. I think everyone can agree that there's always a little bit more work that goes into your mental than you really think and really do, whether that's trying to meditate, talking to someone. BetterHelp really helps to provide a listening ear and help you just better yourself. Who doesn't want to show some self-improvement? So BetterHelp has licensed therapists in the US, and they do initial matching work for you, so you can focus on your goals. And if you want to switch to therapists, you can do that at any time. Sign up and get 10% off at betterhelp.com/lockedonnba. That's BETTERHELP.com/lockedonnba.
Alrighty, some upsets that went on this past weekend as well. Number 22, West Virginia upsets number 14, Baylor, 70-60. This was a battle in Morgantown, West Virginia, so a home one for the team. They had a really strong first quarter, built a lot of momentum, had a 6-point edge just going into halftime. And in the third quarter, that's when they took control of the game, which has kind of been a theme that we've seen in some of these other games as well. But they extended to the lead to as many as 14 points. And a lot of it was because Baylor was playing at a slower tempo defensively, and it just kind of allowed them to outpace them in this one.
Yeah, and especially with the way that Baylor likes to play offense, it's more up-tempo. They like to score in different dynamic ways, let their playmakers create. And so you want to establish that tempo on the defensive end first, so it gives you the room and space to continue that on offense. But West Virginia, they were able to set the tone more in that game. And it was a very big testament to get this win over Baylor also, because Baylor did not lose a single game in this new year. They went undefeated in January, kept making the way up. They were looking like the top dogs in the Big 12, but this is now their second loss, which puts them tied for first place, and West Virginia tied for second place. But West Virginia continues to show that they are a team that can't be underestimated. They are just a thorn in all these ranked teams' back, and they continue to pull off these wins, especially at home, which is somewhere they've been pretty successful this season.
Yeah, Baylor just had a really cold shooting night. They were 27. They didn't shoot well. They shot well from the line, but they were kind of cold shooting overall. But Talia Scott led the way for them with 18 points. And then you also look to Dariana Little-Page-Buggs, who had 12 points, but they shot just 30% from the field on the night. So as you mentioned, they like to have multiple points of attack, and they had 3 players that were in double digits, but it was just a very cold night for them in general. West Virginia, as you mentioned, showing that they are a team that can go out and play against the best of the best. And kind of, to me, one of those other like kind of under the radar teams that sneak in and out of the top 25 poll at times, but they come up on big wins like this that kind of cement them in the AP poll. But another one, number 21, Texas Tech upsets TCU, who's sitting at number 12 right now, 62-60. We've seen Texas Tech drop some of their last conference games after starting the season undefeated. This is a big, significant win for them, especially within the Big 12. A tough drop for TCU, who has been on a decent roll themselves, but I think we've seen kind of a consistent theme with them as well, where they will go on a roll, they'll win some, but then they'll maybe drop more of a significant game.
Yeah, and Texas Tech is still a really good competitor. They were just the more clutch team down the stretch. Specifically, Snetta Collins was the story of the game. She had 28 points off the bench and had the go-ahead three-pointer, about 32 seconds left. Olivia Miles had a chance as the clock was expiring to win the game from three, but it was very heavily contested. She was forced into like a corner three step back. So it rimmed out, but Texas Tech got the win, and Texas Tech got the win, proving why the Big 12 is so incredibly deep. But for TCU, if it doesn't come for the offense, if Marta Suarez and Olivia Miles aren't the people that are generating the majority of it, when they have a little bit more inefficient nights like Olivia Miles had, she was 6 of 19. That has been the main derivative of some of these TCU losses I've seen throughout the course of their season.
Yeah, I think depth starts to come into question, kind of similar to what we were talking about with a Notre Dame if Hannah Hidalgo isn't on, not to, compare and contrast those two. But I think we're starting to see some of those differences in if you're not relying on an Olivia Miles, Marta Suarez in these games. These have been the ones that they've dropped. And again, they're still putting up fantastic performances. But when can you start relying on some other options to get you through the game? But TCU will go on to play Houston on Wednesday, while Texas Tech will who do they play? They play Houston on Saturday after this. So they're both facing Houston at different times coming up here soon. But thank you so much for tuning in today to Locked On Women's Basketball. Make sure you subscribe and follow Locked On Women's Basketball so you get all the latest episodes. If you ever miss an episode, the Everydayer Club is built for you. Get Locked On Women's Basketball ad-free, plus members-only Discord access and more. Head to lockedonwomen'sbasketball.supercast to join the club. And for those of you on video, we send you for the first ever 24/7 National NBA YouTube channel on audio. Make sure you make your second listen NBA Game Night on Locked On NBA. That'll do it for us today. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. We will see you again tomorrow.